Our lexicon is Salmonella, E. coli, Campylobacter, Listeria, food allergies, gluten intolerance. I mean, when I was a kid, none of those words or phrases even existed. Now they are completely ubiquitous in our lexicon. Why? It's because we have so abused natural platforms, natural principles in our food production. The fact is that Americans would be much, much healthier if the government had never told us what to eat.
We'll be talking about food, homesteading, and the health aspect of our economy with our next guest, Joel Salatin. Pleased to welcome him to my show. Joel is the author of several books, including Everything I Want to Do is Illegal and Pasteurized Profits. We'll be talking about a new book that he released as well. And he is the host of Beyond Labels podcast. His most recent book, Homestead Tsunami, is a very interesting book. We'll be talking about some of the themes that he discussed. Welcome to the show, Joel. It's good to see you.
Thank you, David. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you.
It's an honor and privilege to be with you, sir. I want to talk about you first and foremost. Who is Joel Salatin?
Well, I'm a farmer, writer, speaker, advocate for authentic foods and nutrient density and ecological healing. So those are a lot of big ideas. But yeah, we have a farm in Virginia, Shenandoah Valley. Our family co-owns Polyface Farm here in Virginia, and we produce salad bar beef, pigerator pork, pastured poultry, both eggs and chicken, duck, lamb, and forestry products.
Great. And how did you become so well versed in the agricultural space? Have you been a farmer your entire life?
Yes, I have been. Although I've been an avid reader from my earliest memory, and my family, my parents got this property when I was 4. We've now added additional acreage to it, but I grew up here, and my dad never made a living farming. He was an accountant, so I learned how to push a sharp pencil from him. And his father, my grandfather, was a charter subscriber to Rodale's Organic Gardening and Farming magazine in 1945. And so we grew up with this bent toward economy, but also ecology, which is a little bit of a strange thing, because most economists think that to make money, you've got to destroy the ecology. And most ecologists think that economists are out to destroy everything. And so, we kind of have this dichotomy. And so I've been privileged to kind of live in both of those worlds, and it's been good.
All right, excellent. Let's talk about food prices first. The food inflation rate has been coming down, which is to say that the rate of change of the price of food upward has been down in the United States. However, people would like to see their grocery prices actually decrease in nominal terms. Maybe perhaps go back to pre-pandemic levels. I was looking at some social media posts. There was a joke that because of inflation, Black Friday sales now just mean prices will be normal. But that is the shared sentiment shared by many. Is it possible to see price deflation in our country, Joel?
Yeah, well, in food, it's an interesting thing. What drove the price up so fast quickly was simply supply chain issues. It was more a distribution problem than a production problem. If you'll recall, back in 2020, millions of chickens and turkeys and even hundreds of thousands of pigs were thrown away, literally just thrown away, killed and thrown away, because they couldn't get them to these big centralized processing facilities. And so that created a shortage in the system. Right now, beef is extremely high because of the droughts in the far Southwest, the droughts in the South. Right now, America has the smallest number of cows in its breeding herd than it's had since 1950. So just think about that. We've gone to pre-1950 levels of mother cows in this country. And so there are shortages. I don't see food, definitely I never see food moving back to pre-pandemic levels. But certainly a lot of the supply chains, once COVID kind of went away, a lot of those dysfunctions within the supply chain, kind of work themselves out. And that's the main reason why the rate of food inflation has dropped, is not because it's getting cheaper to produce anything. It's because the supply chains worked out their glitches.
Looking back in hindsight, did the war in Ukraine ever really affect our food supply and therefore prices in North America?
Oh, yes, yes, because the war in Ukraine, remember, the lion's share of chemical fertilizer comes from Russia. And so all farmers that were dependent on chemical fertilizers saw a massive increase in in fertilizer costs. Fortunately, on our farm, we don't use it, so we didn't see any of that. So while Tyson was raising their prices 32%, we only raised ours 10%. I think that shows a difference. In fact, there was about a 10-month period when our prices for ecologically grown, authentic local food, our prices were actually lower than a lot of them at Costco and Walmart, because we didn't have the supply chain glitches, because our supply chain is short and not long. And so anytime you are dependent and entangled with these extremely long supply chains, whether it's chemical fertilizer from Russia, or whether it's a slaughterhouse 2,000 miles away, or imports from Argentina and Uruguay, these kinds of geopolitical, socioeconomic glitches have a bigger effect on the longer supply chains.
I'm looking at the United Nations FAO Food Price Index, and there's a red line I'll show on the screen. There's a chart and showing different price indices for different years. For 2023, there's a red line that indicates a downward slope as of October. It measures a basket of soft commodities and items such as sugar, cereals, vegetable oil, and meats, and a variety of dairy products. Now, if the overall index of food globally has been trending down, but the price of the food in the grocery stores in the United States has been trending up, it stands to reason that grocery stores are just marking things up because they can. Is that a fair assessment, Joel?
Wow, that's above my pay grade, David. I'm not sure that that's the case, but I can assure you that the amount of money, what is it, like $6 trillion, has been pumped into our economy in the last 3 years that was not represented by anything, by either service or product behind it. And so when you pump that much fabricated M1s into the economy without any service or product support, it's going to, that's what inflation is, that the money becomes worth less. Before it becomes worthless, it becomes worth less. And so I think that's what we're facing right now. I think across the spectrum in the food system, the fact is that consumers have suddenly gotten all this free money, and so there's just simply a lot more M1s chasing fewer goods, and so the grocery stores are able to to charge more. It's like the party. It's like the party before the hangover. Right now, consumers are spending like there's no tomorrow. Caribbean cruises are full, airlines are full, transcontinental travel is full. It's like we're on a party binge right now, as we use up the last of this funny money, and I suspect that things are going to change a little bit come next year.
Change in terms of less money printing, less available liquidity. How so?
Hopefully that, but certainly, certainly a deflationary period, because the goods will start to catch up with the money supply.
Yeah, interesting. I'd like to ask you about, well, you mentioned potentially some sectors that may experience either a surplus or shortage. There seems to me that a solution to a shortage of beef or other meat products is just synthetic meats. I'd like to play you a clip of the Italian government earlier this year, about 7 to 8 months ago, that drafted a law banning all synthetic food or food produced in labs. Take a listen to this clip, please.
Prodotti da laboratorio non garantiscono, a nostro avviso, qualità, non garantiscono benessere, non garantiscono quella tutela anche, diciamolo con orgoglio, della nostra cultura e della nostra tradizione, che anche all'enogastronomia, alle nostre produzioni agricole, lega un pezzo della nostra civiltà e del nostro modello.
What is your view on synthetic foods? Is that just from a health perspective, not from a political or economic perspective, is it healthy for us?
No, it's not at all healthy for us. In fact, the fake meat sector is already had there are several lawsuits that have already been filed against the fake meat sector for making claims that are nutrition on the labels that's incorrect. It's quite profound. So yeah, the nutrition is simply not there. You simply can't duplicate the complexity of a cow or a living animal. You simply can't duplicate it in a vat full of material. And so the complexity. I mean, let's just take a cow that's out here eating on pasture, and there's 40 species of grasses in that of forages in that pasture. She's going to have a much more complex enzyme, nutritional profile than a cell culture being fed a very simplistic solution of corn, soybeans, sugar beet juice, and something else. And so the living complexity absolutely precludes the level of nuance, the level of nutritional balance and nuance that you would get from an actual animal.
How would you respond to one argument that this could be the solution to alleviating some hunger in developing countries, to provide them with homegrown meats?
Yeah, those kind of statements are coming from people like people who dominate the World Economic Forum and the Bill Gates Foundation and people like that have been telling us that we're going to solve everything with chemicals from day one. And of course, they've given us three-legged salamanders, infertile frogs, eagle eggs that won't hatch, and all sorts of maladies. So so this is basically a mechanistic. It's a basic mechanistic view of life that we can have life without something living in the beginning of it. And so you got to remember that these lab grown meats, the biggest misunderstanding I think about these is somehow people think that you have these bioreactors and somehow they just grow this stuff out of thin air. But no, it takes tremendous feedstocks, corn, soybeans, sugar beets, all sorts of things to feed the concoction, and all of those things, of course, are monocrops. They're grown with monocrops with chemical fertilizers generally. And so what you have is you have instead of a cow or a pig that can go out and eat grass and nuts and bugs and things and make nutrition. Now you're using heavy machinery with petroleum, heavy machinery with petroleum driving it. Energy, you're using chemical fertilizer, hopefully not from Putin, but from somewhere else. Don't know where that's going to come from. You're using monocrops, which destroy pollinators and birds and wildlife and everything else, and the soil, and is making a dead zone the size of Rhode Island and the Gulf of Mexico as a direct result.
What about grinding up insects as protein?
Yeah, same. I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to eat a grasshopper T-bone. I'll take a T-bone off a good steer any time of day.
Okay. What in your opinion is the solution to helping those in need without food?
Well, every time you hear those that people are starving or hurting for nutrition, the people that you're quoting here, the industry, the corporate agenda loves that, because people, we don't want people to starve. We want people to be helped. But the fact is that for the first time in human history, the world is producing 50% more food than the world needs. That's never happened in world history. We are throwing away half of the human edible food produced right now. So the world so not a single person, here's the thing, not a single person in the world is hungry because there's not enough food. The only reason people are hungry is because it's not distributed evenly. And the distribution has nothing to do with production. It has to do with geopolitical elements in a country that don't let a truck cross a, don't let a truck cross a road or whatever. And corruption and, siphoning off, aid in trucks. And a lot of it is simply foreign aid. I mean, I've spent time in Africa, and I've talked with numerous people. I've had visitors. King recently had a king from Nigeria come and visit with his entourage, and every one of these people say, we don't need any foreign aid. We don't need any help from outside. Would you please just leave us alone and get out of here? And we can feed ourselves. Africa is a very, very rich country. And what's going on in Haiti, for example, in Haiti, the hunger there, they destroyed their environment, and it's completely corrupt. There's no law. It's turning into anarchy. So nobody goes hungry because there's not enough food. They go hungry because something geopolitical, sociopolitical, or something is keeping distribution from being able to happen equitably.
I'm reading this paper as we're speaking. I just pulled it up. It's an interesting question. It says here, Africa has 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land. The agriculture sector accounts for 35% of Africa's GDP and employs more Africans than any other sector. So why does Africa spend a staggering $78 billion US of scarce foreign currency on food imports each year, with some countries such as Zimbabwe exceeding 100% of their annual foreign currency receipts? That's an interesting question. If they have the arable land, why are they still importing food?
Yeah, well, for a number of reasons. Probably the number one reason is simply they're not utilizing, they're not managing the land well. And when you have social, I mean, think, goodness, David, think of the unrest right now in Africa. I mean, how many wars and tribal conflicts are going on in Africa? And what that does is it takes the manpower and the woman power. It takes the human labor away from food production and puts it on something else. And so, yes, I really appreciate you pointing out it has 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land. And it's not even being used. Why? Because they're killing each other, and there's no labor left to grow anything. And so what you have, I mean, I've been there, and I have friends there, and it is a resource rich place. There is no reason for Africa to have to import anything. They should be a net exporter, if anything. But instead, they're because of the geopolitical situation, they're siphoning off all of their human resources, their labor, their innovation, their creativity, involved in all sorts of of conflict, of war conflict.
Looking ahead in terms of how the agricultural sector can progress, we saw an industrial revolution about 120, 30 years ago. It changed the fabric of our society. Do you think farming could see another industrial revolution with the advent of AI or other technological advancements, robots perhaps?
Well, we've got to realize that, the answer is, of course, yes, it could. And I am not opposed to AI, but I think it's like any technology. It can either be used for good or ill. Technology in and of itself is not either, good or bad, but technology can be used. I mean, just like the internet, it can be used to find out how to grow a tomato, and it can be used for pornography or whatever, so technology in and of itself is not a bad thing. And so, the question is, how is it going to be used? How will it actually be used? And so, I don't, here's my take. My take is that food is primarily a biological thing. And the problem is here in the West, especially in the wealthy West, we have adopted the Greco-Roman Western reductionist linear idea that food is fundamentally mechanical. It's inanimate. It's just protoplasmic structure, and that is a real problem, because when we take that view, we start making shortcuts on nutrition. We start making shortcuts on. I mean, I'll give you an example. Stressed animals under stress. Animals under stress secrete adrenaline just like humans, and when an animal is stressed and it secretes all these adrenalines, it has effects in the meat, in the egg, and then we eat that stress, and then we get stressed, and you can't overrun. You can't do the kind of disrespectful violence to life and expect to live healthy on the other end. And that's where we've done, and that's why we have a lexicon. We have a lexicon to describe this. Our lexicon is Salmonella, E. coli, Campylobacter, Listeria, food allergies, gluten intolerance. I mean, when I was a kid, none of those words or phrases even existed. Now they are completely ubiquitous in our lexicon. Why? It's because we have so abused natural platforms, natural principles in our food production, that nature bats last and is fighting back, and giving us all sorts of maladies and problems and diseases that never existed before at such a big level. Because we have disrespected the rules, the laws of nature, like feeding dead cows to cows. The experts said feed dead cows to cows. You can grow cheap. Yeah, that's what gave us mad cow. So for years they said feed dead cows to cows. They took farmers like me to free steak dinners to teach us this new scientific way of feeding of making cheaper beef, feeding dead cows to cows. Our farm didn't buy into it, not because we hated progress or hated science or hated the experts. We didn't buy into it because we looked around the planet and said, where does an herbivore eat carrion? It doesn't happen. An herbivore doesn't eat carrion. Now, we didn't know at the time that there would be bovine spongiform encephalopathy 30 years later. We didn't know that, but that is exactly what happened. And so these things, when we trust in technological solutions for a biological issue, we're on a slippery slope down the Jurassic Park slope, where the scientist is all euphoric, about his raptors and they're destroying the planet, and the journalist gets in his face and he says, "But sir, just because we can, should we?" That's a pregnant question, and that's one worth asking, because just because we can do something doesn't mean we necessarily should. We're smart. We can actually overrun our headlights and invent things we can't spiritually, mentally, emotionally, or physically metabolize. That's how smart we are.
Joel, why is it that the average American has become more obese, arguably less healthy over the last 40, 50 years?
Well, we could really trace it to the 1979 food pyramid. You might not be old enough to remember that, but I do. And in 1979, I call it the USDA, not the USDA, the USDA, decided to create this food pyramid, if you'll remember it, where they put the most important stuff on the bottom and the least important stuff on the top. And this is the way you're supposed to eat. So eat more of this on the bottom, eat less of this on the top. And what was on the bottom? The bottom was Cheerios, Twinkies, cornflakes, and carbs. Just grain-based carbs. And from that date, you can actually overlay. If you want to look at an interesting chart, get a chart on grain consumption, carbohydrate consumption, or just since 1979 food pyramid, and overlay that with the chart of obesity and type 2 diabetes, and those lines will be absolutely parallel. Those charts will be identical. And so the fact is that Americans would be much, much healthier if the government had never told us what to eat.
Well, what is fundamentally wrong, just from a health sciences perspective, of eating those things that the government asks us to eat?
Well, because what we need is protein. And we need protein not as much carbohydrate. I mean, Matt, look, years ago when we were running a scythe and throwing bales of hay and milking cows and all that, we needed a lot of carbohydrates because we were burning up a lot of energy. But today, in our more sedentary lifestyle, we don't need that level of carbohydrates. And of course, the USDA was primarily sponsored by the grain interest, the grain cartels. And so that's what went on the bottom of it.
I see. I'm looking at this list here. Some of the countries in the world with the highest life expectancies. I'll just read you a few: Hong Kong, Monaco, Macau, Japan, Liechtenstein, Switzerland, Singapore, Italy, South Korea. Do these countries have a common theme in terms of their diets? What contributed? What part of their diets may have contributed to higher than average life expectancies, or is it really just other areas like quality of life, income? How much does diet play into this?
Well, you're exactly right. Everything does play into it, but diet plays a huge amount into it. Notice most of those countries eat a lot of seafood. They're kind of island, or they have a lot of sea coast, so there's a lot of seafood there, and very, very little grain, almost no grain. The only grain that they would eat would be rice. Rice is the world's #1 grain, and rice is a very different grain. Rice is one of the only grains that can be grown for centuries. With almost makes its own fertilizer, as opposed to barley or wheat or rye or corn or soybeans, things like that. So rice is a very special kind of grain crop, and all of these are in areas where that is. So you've got seafood, very little grain, and you have a true food culture. When I mean a food culture, I mean, so when I travel internationally, I always ask my hosts at foreign countries, I say, when you think of America, and I say American food culture, what do you think? I've never had it fail. Every single answer has always been McDonald's. That's always the answer, American food culture. Whereas, David, when you listed, Hong Kong, Japan, Italy, South Korea, Singapore, all those kinds of areas, you don't think of McDonald's. You think of mahi mahi, or some sort of special local or regional dish. And so these other countries have a food culture that is very different than America's fast food processed. And this is why Italy, bless their hearts, they've banned synthetic foods. Italy also, I'm trying to think, about 6 years ago, they prohibited feeding babies a vegan diet. Italy did that as well, because Italy knew that children that are vegan children don't have enough fatty acids to make their brains work well, and so they become actually they're not as intelligent because they don't have enough fatty acids. Your brain is primarily fat, and so you need good animal fats to feed your brain.
Well, okay, so a few questions on farming, and then I'll like to talk about homesteading in your book. First of all, the culture or the industry of organic farming. Is organic food really much better for our health? I know it's a very broad term. But how would you characterize organic food, and how would you rate organic food relative to other foods in terms of health benefits?
Yeah, so the organic label, I'm going to make a great differentiation between growing organically, the idea, and growing organically, the label. So what's happened in 25 years ago, we got a federal organic label, the National Organic Standards Board, and that created a label. If you wanted to label it organic, you had to get this label. Well, that board has now been co-opted by the industry. And there is, we're the only country in the world that is certifying organic, for example, soilless systems like hydroponic, aeroponic growth. No other country in the world will certify organic, soilless systems, but we do. And so we're definitely an outlier in the world. We're the outlier that is allowing things in the organic label that nobody else in the world recognizes as being ecologically sound. And so the label, in my view, the label has become completely adulterated and is for all intents and purposes almost useless. On the other hand, of course, the organic practice, where you use, I'll just say, instead of organic, I'll say a non-chemical or an ecological approach in practice, where your fertilizer is from a compost pile instead of a Vladimir Putin, a chemical bag of chemical fertilizer. Those practices, that is real, and it has a huge effect, including are the animals on pasture. The whole soil biology thing is critical. And of course, nothing in any of this talks about the human element. And that's a big one for me. I want to see the people involved in the production and the processing and the distribution. I want to see the people involved honored as well. And I'm not getting off into a weird, unions and all that stuff. I'm just saying that, for example, organic does not ask if, for example, at an abattoir and a slaughterhouse, are people killing animals every single day? Same person killing animals every single day. Listen, it's not healthy. I've killed a lot of animals in my life. I mean, I'm a livestock farmer, so we've butchered a lot of animals, but it is not emotionally and spiritually healthy to do that every single day. But that's what the big processors do. That's what the organic processors do. Nobody makes that kind of differentiation. So what I'm suggesting is there is as much difference. There is as much difference within the top and bottom practitioners of organic as there is between the top and bottom practitioners of more conventional production.
I think bottom line is, when I go grocery shopping, is it worth it for me or anybody else to pay the premium for an organic labeled food item?
Some of it depends on what it is. Generally, I would say with poultry and eggs, it's not. Probably with grains, it is worth it. And perhaps some snack food type things, energy bars, that sort of thing. But in general, in the animal sector, it's pretty adulterated. Yes.
Okay. Looking ahead now, the average age of American farmers is getting higher, according to this research report by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA. The average American farmer is now 57 years old. That figure was just 50 in 1978. And it doesn't seem like the data suggests that younger people are rushing to join the agricultural sector. Should this trend continue, Joel, are we going to see a shortage of labor in the agricultural sector?
Yeah, and that's why there's such a push for AI technology, is to try to take over from farmers, and so what we're dealing with here is a centralization and a regulatory impediment. So here's the deal: when young people can't get in, old people can't get out. And I'm surprised that the 57-year, all the stuff that I'm reading says it's about 60. So all the stuff I'm reading is about 3 years higher than what you're seeing there. But without regard to that, the point is that and I know that in the business sector, whenever the average age of the practitioners in that sector is more than about 35 or 37, that is a sector that's starting into decline. And so whether it's 57, 58, 59, or 60, the point is we're way over that 36, 37, that pre-40 metric. And the problem is that the impediments to entry are now so large, with the price of land, the price of equipment, the price of capital infrastructure is so large, that a young person has a hard time getting in, which is why what I promote, and one of our whole themes and programs here, is how do we germinate young farmers that don't have any equity, that have no capital and can't borrow money? How do we germinate them? And so we have portable infrastructure, we have direct marketing, branding, and value adding all the way to the point of the consumer, where the farmer owns the entire value chain all the way to the consumer. And suddenly that enables a young person with no equity to be able to build a farm on land they don't own and sell into a market that they create themselves as entrepreneurs.
Good insights. Let's talk about your book. So in your latest book, which you've called Homestead Tsunami, tell us some of the themes of this book and the lessons you've learned throughout your many years homesteading.
Yeah, so we, our first 10 years here were pretty much homesteading. Now we're certainly very much a commercial farm. Nobody would call us a homestead now, but David, a lot of homesteaders aspire to be full-time farmers. They would love if they could see a pathway to be a full-time farmer, they would if they could. But what's driving the homestead movement right now is a great distrust. You're watching the statistics as well as I am. The Gallup poll just released this huge chart of American institutions and the level of trust in those institutions, from the presidency to churches to schools, healthcare, whatever. And every one of those has dropped precipitously in the last 5 years. Americans are losing trust in their venerable institutions. And what happens is, when people begin losing trust in the system, they're looking for a way out. They want to look for a way to disentangle from that system and build a parallel system. And so people are leaving cities by droves right now, buying small acreages and moving to the country, because there's this deep intuitive understanding. If the wheels fall off, I don't want to be stuck in the city. I want to be where I can drink from a spring, build a little tree house, and shoot a deer and eat. I mean, that's the kind of idea. And so this book, Homestead Tsunami, is about this wave of this movement that is moving out of our cities into a more rural lifestyle, and it's being driven primarily by a desire to detach and disentangle from a system that people no longer trust.
Well, distrust aside, it just seems like a lot of fun. So I'm a city guy, as you can see.
Yeah.
I like to move elsewhere outside the city, start my own little acreage here. What's the process like for somebody who has no background in agriculture or farming? I've got I can get a hunting license, but I don't know how to do this. How much would it cost me? What's the setup process like? What do I need to know?
So this is just like any other skill. So imagine if you wanted to learn welding, or you wanted to learn small engine repair. What you do is you start reading about it. You watch YouTubes about it. You start to build your own portfolio of just knowledge and understanding, and then eventually you make the jump. And the jump may be incremental. You may move to the suburbs first with a couple of acres, and then you may move farther out. But the point is that you begin making changes, and a lot of those changes you can make even in the city. You can sprout mung beans in a quart jar on your windowsill. You can have a hive of honeybees on the roof of your house. You can hang PVC herbal pots on your porch and have your fresh herb garden. There are you can have a vermicomposting kit under your sink and take all your kitchen scraps. You can move out the television, and you can put in a little in my book, Polyface Micro. I have a whole chapter there on how to have chickens and rabbits in a Manhattan apartment. And so there are absolutely things that you can do where you are as you start building self-confidence to make that next step. So I'm a big believer in not only incrementalism, but also proximity. Get start to befriend people who know things that you would like to know. Start to circulate in places. Forget the Caribbean cruise. Go instead to a homestead fair. And you start switching your priorities and your values and what you're investing in, not just money, but investing time and interest and passion in, and gradually, that pathway unfolds for you.
And over time, is it possible for an average person today to live completely off the grid, have his own farm, have his own homestead, live a life where he eats his own food, grows his own crops? Is that still possible?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, thousands and thousands of people are doing this all over the country today. Now, when you say off grid, that connotes unplugged to electricity. Most people still, plug into the electricity, but I mean, there are solar panels and there are, new ways, little micro hydro, little hydro powered things, turbines, obviously wind power, there's batteries, there's all sorts of things. So the answer is yes. And people are doing this all the time. Let me share one very interesting story with you. Last year, David Schaefer and I, he's the founder and inventor of the Featherman Plucker, which is kind of, cottage scale sized poultry processing equipment. He and I did a chicken butchering seminar at the Homestead Festival down in Columbia, Tennessee. And there were about, 5,000 people there. And we had about 300 all gathered around us to watch us, butcher about 8 chickens. And David asked, it was a fascinating, I hadn't even thought of it, but so we've got all these people gathered around, and he said, I want to see a show of hands. How many of you, and most of the people gathered around, they were in their late 30s, early 40s. They had, kids that were, 8 to 15 years old. And so they're all gathered around, and David asked the question. He said, I want to see a show of hands. How many of you, when you were 16, wanted to raise chickens and have a garden? And David, only 2 hands went up out of that whole crowd of people. Only 2 hands. What that tells me is that people are coming in midlife. They grew up on TV and Cheerios and whatever, but something happened in their life and midlife, and they're saying, you know what? I'm not sure I want to trust Monsanto. I'm not sure I want to trust Vladimir Putin. I'm not sure I want to trust Trump or Biden or anybody else. I want to have more control over my, over my destiny, my food, my energy, my lifestyle, and I want to have a little more control. And so people are starting to, to opt out and to embrace a different approach. And I just thought it was a fascinating thing to have only 2 hands in that great big crowd of people to come up. Nobody even thought about this when they were teenagers, but they hit late 30s, early 40s. They're looking at their kids, they're looking at their family, they're looking at their food, they're looking at their health, they're looking at medical costs, and there's whoa. Let's put a stop on this. Listen, if the wheels fall off, and I'm not a doom and gloomer. I don't know if they're going to fall off or not, but if the wheels fall off, there's one thing you don't want to be. You don't want to be sick. You don't want to be the one that's back there in the bed saying, hey guys, as you flee the building, can you pick my bed up and carry me out with you? You want to be the one that can run and do things on your own. And that's part of this, just the, just the freedom to be able to grow some of your own food, cut your own firewood, feed yourself, warm yourself, collect your own water, and not be subject to the utility. Those are things that are resonating in the minds of more and more Americans as we see the urban sector, the political sector, the economic sector begin to kind of frazzle.
I wonder if there is going to be a trend of de-urbanization going forward, which is to say people moving out of urban centers into the suburbs more than, I would say, the last 50 years. I don't know. Do you think that could happen?
I do. I think that could happen. And what's interesting is that your statistic about the aging farmer dovetails with this. Isn't it interesting how nature tends to provide you know, a yin yang, a positive negative on these kinds of things. So here at the very time, when thousands and thousands of families are concerned about their urban situation, we're having all these aging farmers with all this farmland coming up for sale, and so we have this provision to a need that just comes together, and it's actually quite profound. And I think, yes, I think that there is now, I can tell you, there is definitely a massive renewed interest in self-reliance and homesteading.
Finally, tell us a little bit about your business. So you mentioned you don't call yourself a homestead anymore. You've grown a lot bigger. It's now a commercial farm. Are we referring to polyface farms? Is that
Polyface. You can
polyface?
Google it. Yeah, Polyface. We have a website. You can Google it up. We do ship, a shameless plug here, David. We do ship food around the country. So if you've listened to this and you say, I'd like to try something that's not from, Tyson or Monsanto, we'd be glad to service you. We ship every. So beef, pork, chicken, eggs, turkey, and cheese from a grass dairy. So not everything, but most of your animal proteins you can get from us, and we ship nationwide every Tuesday, once a week. So yeah, feel free to find us there. But yeah, so there's about 20 of us employed here on the farm, and it's not, it's certainly not a backyard operation. It's definitely commercial scale, but we don't use chemicals, we don't use vaccines, we don't use mRNA, we don't use antibiotics, and our animals are healthy with a good immune system, and anybody is welcome. If you don't believe what I'm saying, anyone is welcome from anywhere in the world to come and visit anywhere, anytime, and see anything unannounced. That's our commitment to transparency. There are no guard towers. There's no trespassing signs. It's all open and welcome and fully transparent for anybody in the world to come and see.
What about the groundhogs that eat your crops? Are they welcome as well?
No, we have perpetual jihad on groundhogs.
Well,
and fortunately, we raise enough beef and pork and chicken to not have to eat them. And so the groundhogs go in the compost pile. Yeah.
All right. Excellent.
As well as wayward possums and wayward skunks. Now, we don't try to exterminate everything, but if something gets in the chickens and something's causing us a hassle, then we'll protect our stock and let the coyotes have the rest of them.
All right, fair enough. Your farm didn't start off as big as it did. What was the hardest part of the scaling process?
Oh, probably the hardest part of the scaling process has simply been building the team. It really does. In general, business does, when it's all said and done, it comes down to the people, right? Having the right people on the bus and having them in the right seats on the bus and having the bus going the right direction, having everybody agreeing on the direction we're supposed to go. And so the relationship, the people and it is a very intimate team. We work together, we spend a lot of time together, and so we spend a lot of time massaging and keeping the relationships tender and happy, so that when visitors do come, they encounter very, very happy people. And that's one of our signature things that we want to present, is we want anybody who comes for a visit, we want them to leave saying, I've never met such a happy, contented team. And we work at that very, very hard.
Most people aren't farmers. They don't know anything about crops or growing crops or farming, anything like that. But they would like to know, I think, the next question, which is, how do I know that the food I'm buying from a specific farm or a particular area is of the highest quality? Whatever, however you want to define the term quality, how would you approach that question? How would you convince somebody that you've made the commitment to produce the best quality food? What's the process like for you?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. So look, first of all, there's nothing like a visit, okay? And so our farm is within 8 hours of half of the US population. So how many people spend 8 hours going to a theme park or doing this? And we won't charge you a penny. You can come here and visit. We won't charge you like Disney World. And so anybody is welcome to come and visit. But the next most common way is websites, of course. And website surfing. So this has been on my mind a lot, and I'm glad you asked it because um, I know what to look for. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. Right here in the Shenandoah Valley, there's a business called Shenandoah Organics. They're a very large organic poultry outfit, and if you go on their website, it'll and click meet our farmers. You can go, you can meet their farmers, and they've got pictures of their farmers, and every one of them, it's a nice picture. The family standing there, and they're standing there in front of a confinement chicken house, just like Tyson or Purdue or Pilgrim's Pride or anybody else. And these are organic chickens. So my point is that if you will take a few minutes to actually examine some of the brands that you're thinking about, websites are wonderful. Another outfit that they were a lady called me. She said, "Are they legit?" I said, "Well, I don't know." So I went on their website to find out, and it said, we're the liaison for the homesteader, the homesteader to the plate. They were touting themselves. So I say, well, let me see what their chickens look like. So I click on the chicken producers, and the homepage for the chicken producer is this is four big Tyson chicken houses. Well, that's not the same thing. And so look, don't be intimidated by websites. Websites say a lot, they express a lot, and there's a lot there that's not said that you can look look at the pictures, look at the stuff, look at the sayings, look at what they're saying. And the more time you spend on them, especially if it's coupled with some visits, actual personal visits to farms, you will become very skilled. Look, shopping websites is a skill, just like batting a ball or putting a ball in a basket. And it's a skill that you cultivate by putting some time and attention on it.
When we visit a farm, whether it be your farm or any other farm, what specific things should we look for? Processes of farming should we be aware of to help us evaluate whether or not this farm is, in your words, legit or not?
Yeah. Well, number one, does it welcome people? Does it confine? You can only come for a couple hours a week, or only a day a year, or whatever. It is actually welcoming. That's number one. Number two is it aesthetically and aromatically romantic? If it stinks or things are ugly, it's not good. Whether that smell is manure or pesticides, a farm should smell. It should not have smell, and it should not be ugly. It should be beautiful. And now it doesn't mean it has to have white picket fences and be a millionaire's a country club.
Every single farm I visited in my life smelled like manure, but you're saying that's not normal.
No, well, it's normal, but it's not good.
Right. Okay.
So I know some people here, they say, you got 1,000 cows and 500 pigs and 10,000 chickens, and you're saying your place doesn't smell. I can tell you, you can eat a sandwich with our animals. It's completely different. And we're not the only farm like that. So don't think that I'm trying to paint myself as exclusive. And then so we've got access. We've got just demeanor, aesthetics and aromatics, and then the people. Are the people friendly, or do you feel like they're hiding something? Are they open? Are they welcoming? Are they friendly? Are they kind to you? Do you feel truly whatever, wanted, and desired? and then the fourth thing I would say is simply ask about the way they fertilize. Do they have compost piles? Do they, what's their fertility program? Because every farm has to have a fertility program. And so, you're thinking about that as well. And then there's the basic questions about, do you use chemicals, pesticides, things like that? I mean, all those kinds of things are pretty basic, but I'm trying to be a little more, umbrella generic as to what you're looking for.
Well, this has been a great talk, Joel. Very enlightening, very thorough discussion about farming, food, and our everyday life. We could learn a lot from you. Where else can we learn about your work? So I mentioned your book. I'll mention the book in the description as well. Polyface Farms. Check out Polyface Farms. Where can we learn more about homesteading and your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I've written 16 books, and they're available both on Amazon. They're on Amazon. They're also available from our gift store on our website. We make a little more money when we sell them direct. So I challenge people to go there. But I've got all sorts of books there. We've got a video curriculum called Farm Like a Lunatic. And that's a video curriculum now that we have that we're working on every year, adding additional hours. We're up at about 25 hours right now on that curriculum. I do a non-routine blog. When I feel like it, I write something. When I don't, I don't. Called Musings of the Lunatic Farmer. I do a weekly podcast with Dr. Sina McCullough called Beyond Labels. And so, yeah, and it's all on the website. You can hunt and click, and I'd invite people. We do host gatherings here. We have all sorts of events and gatherings here, informational type, educational type things and seminars. And we're hosting Exit and Build, John Bush here next summer. Exit and Build. That's a really great platform. So yeah, there's a lot there. The website has all of it on. So just spend some time, playing with that website.
All right. Do you ship your food up to Canada where I live?
No, we don't. We don't ship internationally. Unfortunately, we don't.
Oh, that's too bad, because I'm about to help myself to some lunch with some processed food. That's all I have here in my downtown apartment. Wish I could be on your farm, maybe someday. Thank you, Joe.
There's good producers in Canada too. So
yeah,
put some, you can find them. They're there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. A lot of good farms here. Thank you very much for being on the show. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.